See what
So
happens.
it has its own.
Yeah. Okay. It looks like we are live here right now. Some people coming in. Welcome, welcome. Good to see you. Good to see you. So for those of you coming in right now, I am with the great Dr. Terry Ann Scott. She's an award-winning historian. She is a speaker. She is a director of the Institute for Common Power, and she was associate professor of African American Studies at Hood College, and the director of the history department, right?
Director of the history program. I used to teach at University of Washington and then most recently at University of Maryland, College Park. Thanks for having me. It's great to see you.
Yeah, it's good to see you. I've been meaning to have this conversation with you for a long time. You're so insightful in where you place this moment in the broader historical landscape. And I just really, just at the top, wanted to just get your overall take on where we are in this moment, because I kind of oscillate between, I mean, I'm you know me, I'm more of the optimist where I kind of see, and you're pretty optimistic as well, but while still like, concrete in the dangers. But
Yeah.
like, where do you stand on where we're at? Are you thinking we're, almost a year into this? Are you thinking that we're in a place where the resistance is kind of pushing back successfully, or is this more of a threat level moment, or just what's your overall take right now?
Both. I think that without hope, we die. And so we have to continue to have hope. One of the things that I'm really happy about being a historian is I talk about something called historical empowerment that allows us to look into the past and say, you know what, if they did that, if an 11-year-old Joanne Bland could be on the Edmund Pettus Bridge in March of 1965 on Bloody Sunday and get up and go back, we can do this. And I have to remind myself of that every morning, steadily, as I turn on the news or each evening as I read the news and see what's happening. And so we are in a moment that is a crisis where I watch the dismantling and crumbling of our democracy. And in addition to that, I watch it be supplanted by a regime of white supremacy. Because let's call it what it is. When we see ICE raids on people who are brown and black, when I hear about the further attacks of dismantling the Department of Education, of trying to erase history, trying to replace history with a very whitewashed white supremacist narrative, learning recently that the Navy is saying that swastikas and nooses, I'm a scholar of lynching, nooses are not threats. They are just simply divisive kinds of things. This is outrageous. This is the kind of cementing of a white supremacy that we didn't even see among some slave-owning presidencies. And so that's where we are. It is a crisis moment. In addition to that, we are watching a mounting resistance. We saw a number of elections that went in the way of putting people in power who are progressive individuals who believe in a just and inclusive democracy. So we are at the crossroads right now. And we have to understand that we have the power to push back, and it is all of our responsibility to do so.
Dr. Scott, every time I talk to you, I feel like I'm ready to run through a wall after we talk. Like, I'm ready to go do the work immediately. And no, that's spot on. And also, all of you coming in here, hit that subscribe button. Subscribe to the Institute for Common Power. They're doing great work teaching this history and anchoring us in this moment. Hit that like button. Smash the like button. Unlimited likes so we can get this live stream out to more people. We're going to publish a recording of this afterwards as well. So, yes, Dr. Scott, that's all spot on, because we really are in this moment where there are these real attacks on history, while at the same time, there, it kind of reminds me of the time period after the Civil War, right? There's that moment of Reconstruction, that moment where there's a lot of black power. We see black people in the South getting state legislature seats. They're actually gaining some power. And then we see that backlash directly after to suppress it, which is like, we had Barack Obama, and then here comes the backlash, right? And now we're in this moment where not only are they eroding rights, targeting DEI and targeting fundamental civil rights under the guise of targeting DEI, they're doing this. They're trying to erase history, as you noted,
Yeah.
and this erasure of history is part of that, because they know that, like you talked about, civil rights movement, black people, we were the ones trying to push America to its stated ideals, right? We're the ones trying to get it to challenge its contradictions. And Trump doesn't want those contradictions to be challenged. He wants to solidify his power because he sees this history as a threat to his power. right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the historical parallel that you mentioned about Reconstruction, I don't want to gloss over that. I want to go back to that. We have a rise in Reconstruction of African American men gaining the right to vote in 1867, and then them voting to ensure that we have the 15th Amendment. We didn't give that to them. Black men gave us the 15th Amendment. And with that political power, they were able to elect nearly 2,000 Black elected officials, from
Mhm.
sheriffs to legislators to school board members. And it was deemed a period of Negro domination by white Southerners who did not want them to have that political power. And the backlash to that then was disenfranchising measures that lasted for more than 100 years until legislation in the 1960s would serve to, in large measure, upend that. But now we see a retreat from those measures again. And you are right. It is. We are in a moment of backlash, not only because of the presidency of Barack Obama, but also because of some of the racial progress that we made in 2020, with everybody watching what unfolded with George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery, and then watching a pandemic unfold where Black people and brown people were disproportionately impacted because healthcare disparities. And so people tried to correct the wrongs. And so this attack on DEI now is a backlash to that progress as well of 2020, a notion that people are somehow taking what is not theirs, that they are giving opportunities that they don't deserve. The irony, and I know you know this, to those comments about DEI is that the Black people, the brown people, the women, because it is mostly white women who have benefited from DEI, actually are frequently more qualified
Mhm.
than their white male counterparts. But under this administration, what we see is a replacement of these high ranking officials, women, Black people, brown people, a 4-star general, African American man, being replaced by less competent white men. But somehow they have been able to convince a portion of the masses, this MAGA group, that in fact these individuals who somehow were given just an opportunity because of DEI are taking something that is rightfully theirs. That is the moment that we are in. And so at the Institute for Common Power, one of the things that we attempt to do, the biggest thing, is to educate people, to
Mhm.
have them understand the history, what we have gone through, and to learn from strategy and inspiration from the past so that we can fight those kinds of injustices today.
Yeah, spot on. And I want to get to more of what the institute does and these teachings you do and the learning tours in a little bit. But also, again, like you're dropping nuggets that I want to drill down further on too. Just I really think that that DI aspect first, when it comes to replacing these people, you and I both know, in order to be a Black professional in these spaces, uh, you kind of got to work really hard. You got to be the most prepared person in the room. You got to go really hard. And that's not to say that these other people didn't earn their spots
Right,
either, right? But it's
right,
we know we have to work extra hard. And it's
right.
interesting, just with Lindsay Halligan and some of these other, when you put loyalty and above qualifications and competence, you get an administration that is in disarray the way it is currently. And I really think so that part of it is key, like you said. And then also on this history part, you bring up the Confederacy, right? Like we're seeing kind of like always seen Trump as an ideological heir to the
Yeah.
Confederacy, as a, not to say that he's as destructive as they were, and not, or
Getting
yet.
close.
Getting not yet, but getting close, right? Not, but he has similar aims, and with
Yeah.
the Lost Cause specifically, where after the Confederacy, there was this effort to rewrite the Civil War as a righteous cause, the birth of a nation, heirs, Woodrow Wilson, screens this. He really, and the Ku Klux Klan rises, which people don't remember, like, or not. You of course do, but I'm talking like the general public doesn't really know. The Ku Klux Klan wasn't like immediately after the Civil War that they existed, right? It was something where they especially rose in the early 1900s, right? Like this is a revival, and now we're seeing something similar where it's like, oh no, actually, the history in which we're a multicultural society where the melting pot lifts all boats and we're all living harmoniously is not the real American story. The real American story is the conqueror's story, the
Yeah.
the the slave owner, the oligarchic South. That's what we want the government to be. You see seeds of that in this administration too?
100%. I'm so glad that you brought up the lost cause because people think that that is kind of situated in this post-Civil War era and maybe lasts through part of the Jim Crow era. What we are seeing right now is a part of that lost cause mentality. The idea that the South lost the war, but it was their divine right to have won the war. And by what does that mean? Their divine right to be the superior race, to own Black people, and that anything that was taken from them was actually theirs by birthright. This whole idea of manifest destiny that we're taught
Yep.
in school that seems kind of benign on its surface is really about a level of white supremacy and entitlement, right? And so we see that with the lost cause again today. That is what this is. This is a reclaiming of things that people assume to be rightfully theirs. This is why so many Black people have been fired from government jobs. This is why DEI has been demonized. This is why any teaching of Black history has been called CRT. I mean, I've taught CRT. You know when I taught CRT? When I taught a 400 level law class at the
Yeah,
University of Washington, not my third grader going to school.
of
And so,
course.
but it is part of a lost cause mentality that exists today because it is a reclamation of something that is assumed to be theirs by nature. So
Hmm.
that is what we are seeing play out. And we see it play out whether it is in the purging of government officials, whether it is in the rescripting of curriculum rights, in the pressure that's put on universities to say you can and can't teach this, you need to eliminate these kinds of programs, the erasure of names of people of color and members of the LGBTIQ community from ships and other things, the removal of Black people from war monuments, as
Hmm.
far as I think it was the Netherlands, where there's a United States monument there. This
Yep.
is all part of a lost cause mentality.
No, spot on. You just listed everything I was right about to list, so I don't even got to do it now. Thank you. No, you're right. All of those attacks on history, these, the specific targeting of the Smithsonian and the African American Museum and the displays that they have there, and you're right. There's this effort to rewrite that history, and again, because they see it as a threat to the kind of authoritarianism Trump is trying to espouse. They know if people learn about this history and learn that, like you said, Joanne Bland, a child is going to be able to be strong enough to protest this. That John Lewis can make a change, then they're going to think, oh, I can too. And also specifically on that one point you're talking about that I really want to drill down on is the reaction to 2020. So
Yeah.
that is huge, and people need to recognize that George Floyd era,
Yeah.
where after he was killed publicly, lynched in a lot of ways. People
Lynched.
people
I
refer to it
write
as
about it
lynch.
as a
Yeah,
lynching.
yeah,
Yeah.
and it was kind of a public almost lynching, like a power, saying, "Oh, I'm better than you, and I'm gonna espouse my power over you," and then basically there was a re-education during that summer. Remember the black squares on Instagram, and everybody thought there, and everyone's relearning about American history and Black history. And a bunch of college kids, a bunch of white college kids, were in these protests, and they go home to their parents, and they're saying, "I learned about this in school," and everyone's like, "Wait a minute," you know. And then I think, like, from there, well, we saw very clearly Christopher Rufo articulated this directly after, talking about how, okay, now we're going to use CRT, critical race theory, to target what we think are is brainwashing our white children, right? To
Right.
feel guilty, when in reality they're just learning about real American history and equality and systemic racism. So I think there's that moment, and then they use CRT as that catch-all term to target basic teachings of Black history.
Absolutely.
And then once Trump gets back in office, we see those executive orders, we see the targeting of universities and the effort to constrain those curriculums, which are still ongoing. They don't get a lot of press,
Yeah.
but those attacks on universities are also saying, we don't want you to teach this. We don't want you to talk about this kind of history. So,
And not to
where
hire professors who teach that and to cancel classes of those who do.
exactly,
And fire
exactly.
some of them.
Fire somebody, and that's where that DEI part comes into play, because that is actually impacting the Black unemployment rate. We're seeing with studies where the federal government purges, because of how heavily populated the federal government is with Black workers. 18% before Trump took office. Purge increases in Black unemployment, and then across the industries we're seeing decreases. So that's all calculated attack. So where do you see this broader attack on history at this moment? Because I don't see that many people. There's not as many dire articles about it as there were in the first few months. But where do you see it as a historian yourself?
Well, you hit a number of incredible things. So 2020, we have this particular moment. And yes, I write about George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery and Elijah McClain having been lynched because as I write about lynching, I have a book on lynching in Texas, it fits in the definition of a lynching. That's what happened. And the reaction to that, though, and this is a moment of progress that we were in, was quite different than we had seen, 50 years ago when nobody was held accountable. Not only
Yep.
were people finally held accountable and imprisoned, with the exception of Elijah McClain, because nobody went to jail for that. But with the others, they did. Kids, adults, people from across racial and religious boundaries took to the streets to
Hmm.
protest, to demand change. You have companies, you have the NFL, who had been in such high opposition to having any kind of show of anti racism. And now they are pushed by their players and a lot of their fans to do so, even though some of their fans didn't want that, right? And so you have these real moments of progress. And then, yes, Christopher Rufo, others, the backlash that we see to that is now. And one of the points that you made about saying, because this is the biggest argument that Moms for Liberty and so many others use, is that it makes white kids feel guilty. Let me tell you this. I have been teaching higher education for no more close to 30 years without dating myself. So for a number of years. And the only time that I have ever had white students, I've taught in Washington State, Maryland, Texas. The only time I've ever had white students upset, they weren't upset for me for learning it. You know who they're upset about? They were upset that they hadn't learned it before.
Yep.
And I have other colleagues who have said the same thing from other universities. They want to know this information. They feel
Exactly.
like they are being robbed of something if they are not taught it. So these are false arguments to stop the truth. But it does have a success in that it creates a level of fear mongering. We work a lot with K through 12 educators from across the country and in Canada.
Mhm.
And across this country, what happens is they feel like their voices need to be silenced because they're not sure what is going to happen. Will they be fired from their careers for simply teaching truth? There is a book,
Mhm.
for instance, by Miss Linda Lowry, who you mentioned, Joanne Bland. That's her sister. She was 14 years old when she was part of the marches to Montgomery, from Selma to Montgomery. She writes about it. It's a young adult book. It is banned. The autobiography of Rosa Parks is banned. These are books. People think the only thing that's being banned is something that is out of, something that's just way off in the margins. No,
Yeah.
this is basic history that is being banned. And we are seeing it happen on a local level. And one of the things I want to say to people out there is we're not powerless in this because it's
Hmm.
not just about the national elections. It is the school board elections that matter too. Whether you have children or not, you have a vested interest in making sure that we have truth that is spoken and taught in this country. Because when we don't teach the truth, we also rob children, regardless of their color, of the ability to look in the past and see these challenging moments, see these
Hmm.
horrific things like slavery and lynching and whatever, and say, but you know what? I saw that person who did something about it, and I want to be that person. Or to watch the
Exactly.
creation of Black towns and the kinds of agency that created, and to say, I'm inspired by that. We rob them of the ability to do that. So we have to pay attention to local elections because those are won and lost sometimes by like 5 votes or fewer.
So also true, well spoken. And everybody watching, keep smashing the like button if you're watching to get this more out to more people, and hit that subscribe button to both me and of course the Institute for Common Power. If you just tap it at the top, you're going to be subscribed to all the Substacks and the posts we post in the future. So yes, all of that is spot on. And you're right, like this attack on history, this erosion of truth, it's systemic. We're seeing it everywhere, and at that local level, it's really had an impact. And I want to talk a little bit about the work that you're doing because it's important because I know like quickly on the history front and like the importance of upholding it, we see Germany after World War II reckon with its past, right? And one of the learning tours I was on, actually when I was in Selma with you guys, we were from Charles Malden. We talk about this reckoning with the history and the importance of that. And basically, they reckoned with it, and they saw a decline in support. There wasn't like they didn't deal with like their version of a KKK really rising up directly after World War II. Like, I mean, still there's of course Nazism globally rising, but not as much in Germany as even you would say in the U.S.
Well, they
Right?
legislate against it. Fly
They
a swastikas there and watch yourself go to jail.
Precisely, and that's
Mhm.
and that's really what didn't happen with the Confederacy,
Right.
as we've talked about, and that's why your work is so important, just because this reminder of the people who fought. It's not just about learning what happened; it's about the reminder of the people who fought and were brave and made a change and saved democracy, because that's what Black people have done throughout history and
Yeah.
marginalized groups. That is the story that the administration doesn't want to be told. So when you're for those who don't know, the Institute Common Power, you guys do these learning tours, and you take groups of people to the South. I've been on one of them. I need to go on another one here soon. I
Yeah.
was there with
Anytime.
Yeah, I was there with the Seahawks and David Domke and the other amazing professors and teachers there. You go and you talk about on the ground. You say this location here. You talk about the significance of it. You break it all down, and then you also do these teach-ins where you, for example, challenged Ron DeSantis, the administration, when they were first targeting critical race theory in Black history, and you did, I think, a 24-hour overnight of teaching that got a lot of attention at the time too. So tell us a little bit about the work you're doing to be proactive against these attacks on history and what's going on.
Absolutely. That's why I left a tenured position. So I left my position as chair to the Department of History at Hood College so that I could start with the Institute for Common Power. So we are an educational branch of Common Power, which is a Seattle-based voting justice organization. And so the Institute was created in June of 2022. And the idea was that for people to really understand how we arrived at where we are today and to really be motivated to knock on doors, to register people to vote, to do change, to understand how we can dismantle systemic racism and systemic inequality, we had to know the history. And so
Mm.
through that, we do that history through free lectures and workshops. We have people like Dr. Hassan Jeffries and Dr. Uhuru Williams and Dr. Keisha Blaine who come in and teach and speak. We have Harry Edwards and Dr. Eric Foner. And then we do the learning tours that you were on, where we go through Georgia and Alabama and Mississippi and Tennessee. We take educators, we give educators scholarships free so that they can go on these learning tours, learn this history, and be inspired. We talk about education to action. And we do, because education without action is a privilege. And
Mm.
we have a responsibility to turn that education into action. And so we do teach-ins. We have one coming up this Sunday. We did one in 2023 after DeSantis had attacked African American history, and we were on the ground. It was me, Charles Douglas, who's on your show frequently, who's the executive director of Common Power, and Dr. Hassan Jeffries and Dr. Uhuru Williams. We were on the ground, but then we had our whole team from Common Power and the Institute behind the scenes, and for 24 hours, we had scholars from across the country come in for 30 minutes each and just teach actual history. Now, mind you, Amit, we're teaching history. We had so many threats and death threats that we had to hire 24-hour guards. I had the St. Petersburg
Insane.
police call me and say, "Why are you coming to Florida?" So this is what we were up against, simply for teaching truth. And this was in 2023. So we have another teaching that we're doing this Sunday, and it's going to be on the ground in Mississippi. It is in conjunction with the Emmett Till Interpretive Center and the Marilyn Lynching Memorial Project. And it is on Mamie Till Mobley's birthday, which is this Sunday, November 23rd, live from Mississippi. We'll have people coming in. We'll be going to all of the different sites. It is to honor Emmett Till. It is the 70th anniversary this year of his murder. It is to spread truth, for people to understand purpose, and for people to know what we can do to create change. I just learned this yesterday, and I know it's been happening for quite some time, that the Emmett Till sign, there are a number of signs that Patrick Weems, who is the executive director of the Emmett Till Interpretive Center, has spearheaded getting put up around the state of Mississippi. Now, this I've known for a number of years, that those signs have been shot up, right? Which is incredible. Every time he put one up, they would be shot up until a company in Philadelphia donated a bulletproof sign with a camera. And so that's what
Unbelievable.
happened. Right. And that was just in 2019. But one of those signs, and this is what I just learned yesterday, is on display in the Smithsonian. The Trump administration had it removed. They had the sign removed. And there are rumors that they also have or are going to remove a picture of Emmett Till as well. It actually makes me nauseous thinking about that and saying that, because it is outlandish that these are the attempts to not just erase the truth, but to really re-script a narrative of American history that is dominated by white supremacy.
No, you're spot on there. And before I touch on that, I just wanted to note to everybody who's watching, I put in the link I put in the chat there, the Eventbrite you see there, that is the teach-in that Dr. Terry Scott's going to be leading on about Emmett Till and honoring Emmett Till and Emmett Till's mother this Sunday. Okay, so check that out. The link is right there. You can also see it on the Institute for Common Power. And if you're watching this on the recording afterwards, you can see it in the link and the write-up that I've done later on this in the future. But yes, Dr. Scott, that's all spot on. I didn't know about the Emmett Till photo being removed. It just shows you, like, because I want to drill down on Emmett specifically, because we found out that Carolyn Bryant lied.
Yeah.
Right? She later said she lied about her account of the whistling and what had occurred. And it just, so this is a 14-year-old innocent child that was slaughtered unjustly based on a lie. And the Trump administration wants to remove this truth. And again, it goes to what this administration is doing. The point is exertion of power, disinformation without accountability,
right?
Just flexing power. We don't need to reckon with any truths or missteps.
No.
And I didn't know they were going to remove the Emmett Till photo. That's unbelievable. And the sign,
they already removed the sign.
They already removed the sign, and then you're saying these signs were shot up in Mississippi as recently as 2019.
Yes, well, even after, so there are signs all over. There are signs that they put up at the riverfront. There are signs that signal that this is the area where you're supposed to turn. The riverfront, the Tallahatchie River, is where his body was found. So there are different signs. There are signs at the Bryant grocery store. And the ones that are closer to the riverfront have been shot up, have been removed and thrown into the water, and then they continuously replace them. At the Emmett Till Interpretive Center, there's typically one on display in Sumner, Mississippi, across the street from the courthouse where the
Mhm.
trial took place. And then there's one that's on display. And so that's the one that is removed. And there are other, even in addition to being shot up, there have been University of Mississippi students who have taken pictures of themselves there, getting drunk and trying to, defame the sign. And it's just astounding to me that even in this day and age, that those kinds of things happen to destroy something that commemorates, that is, it memorializes a 14-year-old child who was brutally murdered, not just by the two men, Milam and Bryant, but according to the FBI report and witnesses, by at least 7 to 8 men who murdered him and beat him. They were the only two who went to trial. And after 90 minutes, they were found not guilty. And in addition to that, they were never brought up on charges of kidnapping, number one, even though there were multiple witnesses that they came into the home. I'll actually be interviewing Wheeler Parker, Reverend Parker, who is Emmett Till's cousin. He was 16
Mm.
at the time, who came with him from Chicago. He'll be on the program on Sunday, and was in the house when he was taken. So these two men were never brought up on kidnapping charges. And then a few months after they were found not guilty, they actually sold their story to Look magazine for a sum of $3,500 or $4,000, where they admitted murdering this child. And there were two things that they cited as well. They said, number one, that with that recent Brown versus Board of Education ruling from the year before, that they were not going to have their white daughters sit next to black boys in class. And number two, they said they'd be damned if black people got the right to vote.
And that just tells you the what motivated that violence at that time, and still to this day is it's this increase in black power and this increase in equality that they feel threatened by. These specific racists, right? I mean, obviously, it's not all. There's a lot of white allies that we have, and it's these specific people that are the ones. And again, that's what Trump administration doesn't understand. This is an attack on white people. It's an attack on racist
Right.
people.
It's
You
an
know,
attack on racist
it's
people.
an attack on
That's
racist
right.
people.
That's
So
right.
like, if you feel offended by it,
Then maybe
hit
you need
hit
to look
hit
at your own racism.
hit dog holler for some reason. It wasn't about you. You made it about you. All
Exactly.
right. Like, so no, that's just the Emmett Till story is just disheartening because it reminds me of one of the reasons why I got politically activated at myself was I was about 19 or 20 when Trayvon Martin was killed. And I was like, I kind of looked like him that was back when I had hair. I
Yeah.
kind of looked a little like him, and it was like, I lived in near a suburb that was like his, and it's like I could have easily, and it really hit me. It literally activated me. And Obama was president at the time, and it was just, that was really a pivot point for me. And it's like
Yeah.
with Emmett Till, that was a pivot point back then. And with Emmett Till's, the bravery of Emmett Till's mother for having decided to display the body
Yeah.
after they discovered it really changed the
Yeah.
hearts and minds of people. So just like with this specific teaching, like why do you think this story is so evocative and important? I mean, I know the answer, but like I want to hear you talk about the purpose for this teaching, why Emmett Till's story is so moving, and why you feel the need to reaffirm it and teach it again right now.
Right. Multiple reasons. First of all, it is her birthday. It's in honor of her and mothers of the movement, other mothers who've experienced similar tragedies at the hands of racial violence when their children are murdered. Number two, it's the 70th anniversary of his murder, and we want to keep his memory alive. Number three, you hit on something really important. And thank you for sharing that about your own journey into activism. That was a catalyst for you. Emmett Till's murder was a catalyst for an untold number of people into the modern civil rights movement. Mamie Till said she was going to take the privacy of her pain and make it public. And, she did that even before she had the open casket funeral where she said, I want all the world to see what they did to my boy. As soon as she found out Emmett was missing, as soon as Uncle Mose called her in Chicago and told her, she got to work letting the black press know. She contacted Mayor Daley of Chicago. She contacted the governor of Illinois. She made sure that it was public. So when you look in the newspapers at the time, you actually see not that he had been found, but Chicago boy missing in Mississippi. She publicized it long before they found him. And when they
Mm-hmm.
found him, then she made sure to make sure that his death served as this catalyst. She traveled the nation with people to talk about what happened to her son, to talk about the injustice of these men being found not guilty, which she was not shocked by. There are people like Muhammad Ali, Julian Bond, Ladner sisters from SNCC, an untold number of members of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee who cite the singular moment of their inspiration to join the civil rights movement the murder of Emmett Till. He is a catalyst for change. They are who populated a modern civil rights movement that brought us things like the 1964 Civil Rights Act, the 1965 Voting Rights Act, which is increasingly being gutted today. And
Yep.
we need to preserve those justices because we are now in the midst of an administration who will very happily destroy all of those pieces of legislation. We have already seen with the 2013 Supreme Court ruling the gutting of portions of the 1965 Voting Rights Act that has given way to a number of voter suppression laws across the country right now. And they
Hmm.
want to eliminate it altogether by legalizing essentially gerrymandering. And
Yep.
so we have to make sure that people know this legacy, that we bring another generation into being inspired by Emmett Till and Mamie Till Mobley.
No, so well said. That's a great purpose to re-inspire people to recognize like that was a catalyst moment then, and it should be still be a catalyzing moment today because Emmett Till wasn't the last person that faced that atrocity, right? We had the George Floyd instance, obviously different circumstance, but nonetheless, nope, someone who did not deserve to die, Trayvon Martin, and then we see these catalysts repeatedly over time, Michael Brown, and then they move us and they make us recognize how far we still have to go. And
Yeah.
you're talking about these attacks on civil rights. Donald Trump, during his DEI flurry of rollbacks, a lot of people didn't really catch it, but the Equal Employment Opportunity Executive Order Lyndon Johnson had issued was rolled back during that time. And that was something that actually forced federal contractors, people who work with the government, that's the private sector regulation, for them to actually uphold non-discrimination. So that wasn't DEI. That was a basic anti-discrimination executive order that Trump had rolled back. So he's rolling back and has targeted basic anti-discrimination, basic civil rights. And that has been at the executive level. We've seen it at the state level.
Yeah.
And again, one of the positives, just because I know a lot of people watching, maybe feel sad after hearing about these stories, but these people have overreached, I feel, in a
They
lot of
have.
ways. And I
Yes.
think we see this clapback, this power, the 2025 elections, these enormous swings to the left that were bigger than the swings in 2017. And I was on the ground in Virginia during that time, and I interviewed Ralph Northam at the time. Back in the rant days, I was just 24. I was nervous as hell, but it's a different story. But we interviewed him, and we saw those swings. He won by 9 points. This time, Spanberger won by like 15 points, like huge, almost double, or almost
Right.
double. And
Right.
people are fed up, and I think we're seeing a momentum here on the side of the good. And even if the Supreme Court does roll back that provision, which seems like it might be next summer, too late to gerrymander, and also for 2026, and also the other redistricting pushes he's done have been backfiring with Indiana and Kansas by judges, and then also on the ground, the Republican lawmakers in Kansas and New Hampshire were like, nah, we actually don't want to do that. And we're now, at the moment, Democrats are up 3 seats with California. With California, because Gavin took out the clause, I think. He took out the trigger clause on Texas. So they're still going to they're still redistricting in California, I think. So my point overall is, like, especially before the last few months, there was this impending avalanche of authoritarianism from Trump, an effort to institute what you're referring to and what we're talking about here, and this revival of the lost cause of the Confederacy, all of that stuff. And now we're seeing that the progress that we made reaffirming itself and saying, no, actually, we are that multicultural country. We are the country that wants to live in harmony. We are great as we are, not as we were before.
Right.
And are you seeing that hope too? Is that giving you
100%? I think evil falters under the weight of good. And we see this continuously. We see it throughout history. Now, it means that we can't stop fighting, right? So this kind of activism and the pushback has to be a continuous thing. Freedom is a constant struggle, as they say. But we do see, and I think the importance of the wave that we saw recently is that people understand the power that they have. Because oftentimes, and this is what the administration and others want us to believe, is that we are disempowered, that we have no hope, and that we have to just lay down and take whatever it is that they give to us. But what this shows us is that our voices, our votes count, that we can make a difference. And when we're talking about some of those efforts being stopped, then we see that from judges. I always credit my father from a very young age telling me, don't just gloss over the judges when you're voting in your local elections. Research the judges. Make sure that you are voting for judges who believe in good and progress and democracy. And we see that they are the ones who are kind of the keepers of the gate right now. They're the ones who are stopping a complete crumbling of our democracy in many ways. And so are we. And even when we take the
Yes.
street in our King protests, I had people contacting us at the Institute. Why are people doing that? Because it signals to others that there is a mass of individuals who are in opposition to the rise of an authoritarian regime and that we have power to do something about it. And so we
Yes.
cannot sleep on that power.
No, that is so true, and that's really been the focal point of my journalism recently. You know, like before he took office, I was heavily covering Project 2025 and the threat of his administration, and during it, the beginning of it, documenting how the progress he's made. And now, the main storyline I'm seeing, which shifted faster than the first term, is this shift to a weakening, a rapid weakening of Trump and his movement, and fracturing of MAGA, and and people recognizing their power and flexing it forcefully. That those 2025 elections were seismic. And I really do think in 2026, if we, like you say, if we keep this pressure up, people in the fourth estate in journalism, I also believe that whether you think you're partisan or not, you are part of the pro-democracy coalition. You have no choice. Journalism is the immune system of democracy. You're part of that coalition, whether you like it or not. You pretend to be unbiased, but if you want to push, you got to push back. And I think all the forces here, if everyone keeps up that fight going into 2026, I personally think the GOP is cooked. But you know
Yeah.
that's a different conversation. But I really do believe. Go ahead.
No, I believe that. And it makes me think about something that Dr. King wrote in his autobiography when he said the worst thing wasn't, and I think he says this in the letter from Birmingham jail also, the worst thing was not essentially the racism and the evil of the bad people. It was the silence of the good people. And so
Yes.
you're saying, you cannot take a neutral stance. That too is a privilege. And it is one that I find abhorrent. I mean, I'm going to place a judgment on it. I'm sorry. We all have to take a
Of
responsibility in
course.
making sure that we protect those who are the most vulnerable among us. And you are right. This is exactly what we're seeing. Listen, when there's a moment when I can read something and say Marjorie Taylor Greene has a good point here, things are changing.
Things are definitely changing, and honestly, you're right. I think, like, first off, I think Marjorie's an indicator of Trump's widening weakness. She's
Yeah,
politically savvy. She wouldn't do that out of the goodness of her heart. She sees where the winds are going, right?
that's right.
And I do think more people are choosing a side. I see people in the comments. Just want to shout you
Yeah.
guys out. We see Ty Kramer hopping in here, Stephen Romaine. We got our boy Avery Kennedy Jr. We got all these people. I saw Miss Faye in here earlier. All the people in the comments, appreciate you. Patricia West, you've been commenting. Everyone, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, support my independent journalism,
Yeah.
subscribe to what the Institute does. I'm going to be
the teaching.
register for the teach-in on Sunday. I'm going to be posting this out in an article. You'll be able to find, if you scroll up, the link to the teach-in in the Eventbrite in the comments. Also on the Institute for Common Power Substack page, where this Sunday they're going to be going over that crucial history of Emmett Till. And overall, it's this moment where I really think, like, you brought up MLK, like the arc of, moral history bends towards justice. Well, it doesn't just bend on its own. We have to push it. We push it. And I think right now there's a significant more amount of people, an increasing number of people pushing on that arc, as opposed to the fickle, idiotic, foolish, weak, fragile, sorry, I got to go off on them, incompetent, loser-minded people in the Trump administration that are trying to hold back that arc of justice, and they can't do it. They're weak. They think they are so much smaller than they think they are and dumber than they think they are, right? Are you seeing that too? Just
Oh,
quickly?
absolutely. Again, I'll say it again. Evil will falter under the weight of good and righteousness. And that is exactly what's happening. I mean, he already has put people who not only are their intentions so nefarious and iniquitous, but also I think they like to project. They say, oh, so-and-so lacks the brain power. No, they actually lack much of the brain power to really be able to execute some of the things that they're doing. They rely upon the ignorance and the
Mhm.
feeling of a loss of power of their constituents. And that is a problem. And that's why we have to continuously put out correct information. Even
Yep.
when we had cut off, for instance, the SNAP benefits. Now, we know that white people are the largest recipients of SNAP benefits.
Mhm.
But what they started to play on were the racist fears and notions and started to target and say, senators and congressmen and women say that it is Black people who are taking these SNAP benefits. No, actually, statistically, they are not the largest recipients of these benefits. But what does that tell us? That tells us that they work to relate to the feeble-mindedness of many of their constituents. And so we have to counter those negative messages with truth. And that's
Yes.
what we do, whether it is through social media, whether it is for people having conversations with their family and their community. You have to continuously stay on truth. That is how we fight that kind of misinformation.
Yep, the more people that uphold objective reality, the more this disinformation falters. And I think right now we're seeing a resurgence of objective reality and a faltering
Yes, we
of
are.
the disinformation in the MAGA movement and MAGA regime right now. So no, that's all spot on. Thank you so much, Dr. Scott, for being here. Everyone for watching, hit the subscribe button, subscribe to my independent journalism if you'd like, become a paid subscriber. That's really what supports this
Become a
work.
paid subscriber.
Become a yes, thank you,
Yeah.
Dr. Scott. Yeah.
I mean, I just want to say this. You're brilliant, and the work that you are doing, we need you. This is how we are going to make sure that we have a just and inclusive democracy. So I just want to commend you for all the hard work that you are doing.
Thank you, thank you, and I want to commend you for like you're doing that real work. You're going on the ground. You're doing these teachings. You're promoting truth. You're carrying on the legacy of these civil rights icons and heroes that actually made the democracy that we have. And I really respect your work. Always have. I've seen you in action as a lecturer. You're one of the best I've ever, probably the best I've ever seen in my life, to be honest. Up there with you and David you and David are incredible lecturers. And I love the work you guys do. And everyone here, support the Institute for Common Power. They're fantastic. I've collaborated with them in the past. Common Power broadly, as you know,
Yeah.
and subscribe. And most importantly, sign up for that teach-in this Sunday, the
Yes.
Emmett Till teach-in. I'm going to be posting the link on this on my Substack, and later you'll get in your emails. And Dr. Scott, any final word or any thoughts as we head out?
Education action. We can do this. We should never let anyone tell us that we cannot. If they could do that in the past, we can do this.
Well said. All right. Well, thank you for being with me, Dr. Scott. Appreciate all you for
Thank you.
watching.
Thanks, everybody.
All
Bye
right.
bye.